Famous composers come back to life courtesy of actor, singer, playwright, and pianist Hershey Felder. Felder is familiar to Chicago audiences for his long-running one-man shows, George Gershwin Alone and Monsieur Chopin. And now he's performing his latest work, Beethoven as I Knew Him, at the Drury Lane Water Tower Theater. In a moment, a performance by the musical genius known as Ludwig van Beethoven. But first, we're joined by Hershey Felder. Hershey, welcome back to Chicago, and welcome back to Chicago tonight.
Thank you very much.
First of all, you made your mark with Chicago audiences as George Gershwin, and that show ran for 70 straight weeks. There was a real connection between you and Chicago audiences. Why do you think that is?
I think there was a connection between George Gershwin and Chicago audiences, and as far as my connection to Chicago audiences, I love the city. I have to tell you, I've come back, I've given 5 performances at the Drury Theater now of Beethoven, and it's like coming home. No matter where I am, and I've been known to say this. People ask, where is your favorite audience? I said, it's hands down, it's Chicago. There's a sophistication, there's an elegance, and there's no pretense. And so you come, you perform, you be yourself, and there's something develops. It's like a love affair. And so I love coming back.
Well, here's a look from the 2004 performance of George Gershwin Alone at the Royal George Theater. You know, audiences went crazy for that show. Why does Gershwin keep resonating with? Resonating with modern audiences?
Hope. There's a hope in the music. You know, he came at the beginning of the last century, and he was able to really meld the sounds of the country, the hope of the future, the hope of enterprise, and give it a sound. America didn't really have a sound. You know, in the South it had a form of jazz. In the North there was sort of still, impression of European music. But George Gershwin was able to take all these pieces and craft a sound. And I think when we listen to him, we still hear what America is capable of. And I think people in this country really believe in that there is hope. And that's what I hear in Gershwin, and I think that's what the public hears as well.
You know, it's interesting. I would imagine overseas a lot of audiences, when they think of American music, they think of people like Gershwin. Now, Monsieur Chopin, your father was Polish. Did you grow up listening to Chopin?
Absolutely. I grew up actually more classically oriented than Gershwin. Gershwin came to me late in my development. When I was 19 years old was when I first attacked the Rhapsody in Blue. And growing up at home, I grew up in a very immigrant home. My mother was Hungarian and my father was Polish. So the food in our house was terrific and plentiful, always eating. But more so, Polish sounds and Polish heritage very much so surrounded everything we did at home, and it was impressed upon me that this was important stuff. And so for both classical and heritage-wise, yes, Chopin was very much so a part of my upbringing.
Well, yeah, here's a clip of you playing Chopin. That is portraying him and performing his music from 2005. You know, you've been described as not just a consummate actor, but you play concert-level piano. Not that many people can do a show like Chopin or Gershwin or Beethoven. To have those two skills doesn't come along every day.
Well, it was something that, interestingly enough, growing up, I grew up as both a theater person and studied music very seriously in Montreal, which is my hometown, which I love, very European town, as it were. And my influences were both theatrical and musical, except they were completely separate until I had this wacky idea of putting them together. And there's a reason that most people don't do it. It's because it's absolutely mad.
Oh, yeah.
It's melding two things that don't go naturally together. And spent my life really finding the pathway to make the illusion complete. No matter what you do, you still suffer, but you have to work very hard to do it, and so I'm keeping on the path of figuring out how to do it.
Tell us how you are telling the tale of Beethoven.
Beethoven was a very big question as to how to tell it. To show up and say, "Hello, I'm Ludwig van Beethoven, I can't hear anything." Doesn't quite work. And I thought, so what is he going to do? Be angry with the audience and scream at them? And then I wrote this because I was furious, and then I wrote this because I had one happy moment. It didn't, it didn't quite work. And I looked for ways in, and then I looked for analyzing the music from end to end, and I said, well, that's good, but how much entertainment is that? But we have to put all these things together. Then I came across this book, Aus dem Schwarzspanierhaus, which means Out of the House of Black-Robed Spaniards, which was written by Gerhard von Breuning, who was a doctor when he wrote it. It was in 1870, that many years after Beethoven died. Beethoven died in 1827, and this man was Ludwig van Beethoven's best friend's son. And he spent the last 2 years of Beethoven's life by Beethoven's bedside caring for him, and he witnessed Beethoven the way most people didn't. And when he wrote this book in 1870, it was in honor of the 100th anniversary of Beethoven's birth, to which he was invited to host an event, as it were, or be a speaker at an event, as being effectively the last person alive who had been that close to Beethoven.
So you tell the story of Beethoven through the eyes of this person who's
becoming him through his eyes.
I see.
So it's a this way in, and it's not an obvious way in. And what's fun about it, as I'm beginning to really know the piece, is to start off one step removed and bring him to life through, as opposed to appearing and bringing and convincing that this is the guy. It's really an interesting and fun way to do it.
Gershwin, Chopin, Beethoven, is there one you feel closest to?
You have several children, don't you?
Yes, of course.
Which is your closest?
Well, no, listen, the answer to that question is it's like sitting on a three-legged stool. Right. Which leg is the most important?
The one you're sitting on.
Well, you know, they're
exactly.
all important to you.
They're all important, and I think the notion is that the one I'm playing is the one that's important at the time that I'm playing him.
Hershey Felder, welcome back to Chicago.
Thank you.
Great success with Beethoven, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.